Welcome back, everyone, to Daily Classics. Today's top pick is a 1991 Porsche 928 GT. Very rare 5-speed transmissions in Connecticut. Let's check this highly exotic car out. Found this car on Craigslist. It was listed a few days ago, like 10, 12 days ago. It's a 1991 Porsche 928 GT. It's a 5-speed transmission. He's asking $49,500. Very expensive. And we'll get into the price and start talking about these cars right now. This car, just to go through it, not too much description on the car, and we'll go through the photos. Very clean and nice, 84,000 miles. And again, this is a 1991. The Porsche 928, basically, they only produced 61,000 units from a run from 1977 to 1995. That's about when it went out. So over an 18-year period, you're just talking 3,388 units a year. I was a Porsche salesperson at Porsche, Audi, Volkswagen in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. Can you imagine a small showroom where you had Audis, Porsches, and Volkswagens in the same showroom? And that's how things were back in the 70s and 80s. And this 928, we only had an allocation. We were a fairly sized, medium-sized dealer. We only had an allocation of maybe 3 of these a year. So, and every time we'd order these cars, we didn't build these to production because you just got an allocation. So you would allocate these cars out to dealers, and then most of us would order automatic transmissions so we can swap them with other dealers because people had a preference of colors back then. And the big option for these cars were the rear air conditioning units, and that was an optional, and this car does have that. So when we have a manual transmission car, it was most likely a European import, gray market, which this car isn't, or it could have been a European delivery program where people go overseas to bring the car back, or it could have been a custom ordered car for a customer in which he would have had to wait about 5-6 months back in those days. So 5-speed transmission cars are very rare to find in any model year of the Porsche 928 in these United States. Back when this car came out, there was a belief that water-cooled V8 engines would have a broader appeal than the compact air-cooled cars. And I met Peter Schultz at the time. He was the CEO of Porsche. And he also tried to do a lot of things. Not only did he try to introduce water-cooled cars between the 944 and the 9 Turbo, the 924S, if you remember that car, and of course the 928. The 911, up to Peter Schultz, that car would have been discontinued, and kind of rightly so because the volumes were falling on those cars in the early 80s, mid 80s. It wasn't a big volume car, and Porsche dealers in particular weren't doing that well because the volumes weren't there. So Peter Schultz had this vision of doing a couple of things. One is to bring these water-cooled cars in, and this car is a stunning example of such a effort. And then he also tried to buy out the U.S. dealers and sell cars direct, almost like Tesla does today. And that really was very difficult to achieve and caught a lot of bad press back in the 80s. And it led to Peter Schultz, he was out, he was out as a CEO. So, but this 928 is the ultimate Porsche flagship. It was made in West Germany at the time. Look that up before the wall came down. The wall came down in West Germany in 89. So when the car first came out, Porsche had build plates that said made in West Germany. It was kind of cool. Front engine, rear drive, has a transaxle. Similar to the 944 turbos, that type of thing. The design study on this car is interesting because the design study is basically, it has the pop-up headlights like the Miura, the Lamborghini Miura. And believe it or not, when you look into I'll share you a photo of this, the car actually, the rumor is, and it makes a lot of sense, because there was a rumor that the car was actually styled off the AMC Pacer, so to speak. Now, the Pacer, you got to remember, this car was fairly advanced from a design perspective, and there were quotes and interviews at the time that the designers actually were inspired by this greenhouse that was totally different than what we would see on the roads. And if you look at that curvature in the rear window in particular, and you see that curvature in the Porsche rear window 928, you can see some design reflection in that. Was that a rumor? Was that true? I don't know, but might make a little sense. Because the car was front engine, rear transaxle, it had like a 50-50 weight distribution. I'm a big fan of the 928, always have been. The car was sleeping up to COVID. The car was sleeping for the longest time. You could buy these cars for 12,000, 14,000, 25,000 in mint condition. And now the car is now becoming more and more popular. And one of the reasons for that was Tom Cruise's car. If you remember, Tom Cruise had the movie. What was that movie called? Risky Business, and his edition, Joel's edition, that his character's name was a '79 car, and in '79 that car had a 4.5 liter V8. This car has a 5.0, but the movie car sold for $1.9 million in September of 2021, and because of that, all of a sudden, especially during COVID, when nobody else had anything to do but buy cars, 928s just had an awakening, and it just prices started going up. Now they've gone up, and I'm seeing them softening up a little bit now. But this car is 49,500. We'll get into that in a little while. But the real collectors, see, this is a 928 GT. But the real collectors out there from a $50,000 mark, what this person's asking for, is really the final run, which they call the 928 GTS. And those cars are now bringing about $90,000, $85,000 on Bring a Trailer and things like that. And only 77 of those were shipped here to the United States. So the 928 GTS is the most expensive model and the most collectible one that you can find. But 928s in particular, the problem with 928s are it's almost like owning a Ferrari 308 GTS or something like that. You're going to need huge budgets to have these cars repaired and serviced. And the parts have always been traditionally crazy high on these cars. So if you had to replace anything on this car, a water pump, a transmission, even a clutch and all, the markup on these items, unless you go to Germany, the markup on these items here in the United States, especially with tariffs, if that comes through, it's like owning a Ferrari. You're going to be at that budget level when it comes to working on these cars. And that's if you can find someone that knows about these cars, because all the mechanics back then in the 80s and 90s, they most of them retired, the guys that were really skilled, right? So there's a lot of risk in buying a car like this from a collectability point of view. You can see the value of the car kind of like staying where it is. The better models like this model here, the GT model in 5-speed, has a lot of collectability. Does it warrant the $49,500 price with 84,000 miles? Possibly. Somebody will pay this. I think if he put this car and Bring a Trailer, he would definitely get $40,000 for this car because it's a 5-speed transmission car. And that's where the collectability is on the later model 928s. And believe it or not, because of Risky Business, the early 928s, the 79, the 80, with the checkered flag cloth interiors that were really modern back in the 70s, those cars have some collectability too. Those cars 9 years ago you can buy for $7,000, but those days are gone. Those cars are now $25,000, $20,000. So anyway, long story on the 928. This car here in particular, let's dive into the photos a bit and see if we can tear apart the photos and talk about it. In 1986, the car had I think it was 87, the car had an upgrade, front and rear fascia upgrade. The S4 came out in 88, and basically what you're seeing here is a new fascia on the bumper, the front and rear bumper, which I really like. And there's those Lamborghini Miura type headlights that pop up. It's pretty exciting to be behind the wheel of this car. There's the spoiler that came out later on in after 87, and there's the rear end treatment where the rear lights are more flushed with the bumper, and they're urethane bumpers front and back. Big tail spoiler back here, so I guess it works. The interior on the car is, of course, this car is in the 90s. They came out with the airbag. This car has a driver and passenger airbag. Again, if you had to replace those airbags, I don't know where you get them today, But the seats look to be really nice condition. They were fully loaded cars. as you might know, that this whole cockpit here, instead of the steering wheel tilting, you basically had an adjustable cockpit. It was a manual adjustment, but the whole cockpit and gauge cluster would move up and down as you to sit as you know to fit as you would. Sound system back then was premium sound, and of course the 5-speed manual transmission is crazy exciting. I mean, it is so anxious. This car is a very anxious car with a manual transmission. It really wants to go, and it takes some finesse to get this car off the line in a manual transmission. The automatic transmissions actually were a little faster. I believe the automatic transmissions were built by Mercedes-Benz, but the manual transmission, as far as handling goes and control of the car, you can't beat it. This car has the rear air conditioning units. It really had like its separate air conditioning unit in the back because these cars ran traditionally hot. The interior looks beautiful. Oh, the dashboard is fantastic. The dashboards on 928s in particular are always warped with sun. So when you can find a car with a dashboard that's so even and original, there's a lot of value in that. And that could add $5,000-$6,000 in my book because you can never replace that. You can, but it's going to cost you so much money. So if the dashboard on a late model car like this is in mint condition like this one shows, it's really nice, and also I like that. The door sills and all that looks to be original paint, looks to be an original car. There's that center air conditioning unit. You really can't fit many people back here, but you can fit kids back there if you wanted to. There's a long snoot. That hood is all aluminum. You open up that hood, it has a beautiful curvature. You can see the amount of money that they spent on the tooling of this car. It is absolutely amazing. And there's the rear of the car. Has all the kits to it. And that's it. So, is this car worth $49,500? Well, if it's worth $40,000 and somebody really wants to buy this car and is local to Connecticut, in this type of price range, he might go to $49,000 and take it home. It's that type of market, right? So, and that's it. This beautiful 928 1991 GTS. It's not a the later model car. Like I said, the GT is this is not GTS. This is a GT, but the GTS is the more collectible one that came out in '92, and there were only 77 of the GT S models. And those are bringing big money today. So big fan of the 928. Hope you have some big dollars to maintain this car. But I have to say, the drive in this car is spectacular. It is something that you have to really experience. And I had a lot of seat time in these cars, both recently and when I was a kid selling them. So a lot of fun. If you're not already a subscriber to Daily Classics, please subscribe. Love to see you. Just hit that subscribe button on the main page. If you know anybody that likes cars, friends, please pass along this channel to friends that love cars. That's how we grow. And if you like the video, give it a thumbs up because that's how we help the algorithm. So that's how YouTube works anyway. Again, this is Rob. Hope you enjoyed this 928 and a little tutorial behind it. One of my favorite cars and something that I will buy again. Just not sure when I find one. Thanks very much. Enjoy your day, and we'll see you here.